Good evening, TheoTrade. This is Corey Rosenblum, and you're watching the Theo Nightly video for the 13th of January here in 2022, and we are talking about financial stocks. But before we get to the financial stocks, which have earnings tomorrow, some of the key ones do, let's talk about the broader picture and the sell-off that was focused mainly in the NASDAQ today. So looking at the NASDAQ futures, just seeing them in a strong sell-side activity, and that's representative of the weekly expected move, at least the auto-generated expected move. So that played into, at least yesterday and today's session, just about that 16,000 level for the NASDAQ futures. Same logic would play in the Qs, triple Q, which is an ETF, and that is similarly into that 389.50, just a little bit under the 390 per share here in the QQQs. So that'll be the focus, and if we step outside of those, let's take it our conglomerate signal of the monsters of tech, or symbol here, and that's just looking at where the big stocks were. Some of the weakest names, we see them here, are some of the largest market cap names. So before we start talking about financial stocks, let's start with technology. And technology is XLK, that was down about 2.5% right there with the NASDAQ. So to look at these, let's get everything else off the watch list. If you are curious about market cap and how the functions go, we'll look at market cap in here, and we can sort and rank by market cap. This is a lot of what I do as a swing trader scanning for stocks. I want to see which stocks are in play, but when I get candidates, I like to rank them or sort them by market cap. And I tend to focus my trades or my positions or my attention up in the top leading market cap names. But this is just looking at stocks in the S&P 100. And we see that the big names were down, and some of them were down a lot. For example, Microsoft was down 4%. It has a $2.2 trillion market cap. Wasn't long ago we were just talking about Apple at $3 trillion, but that again was in the past, not there right yet. And under that is Tesla, which is down 6%. NVIDIA was another strong pull to the NASDAQ, and that was the 5% decline. These stocks are going to have large, significantly outsized weight on the NASDAQ, and so that is down 2.5%. But if we go to smaller cap stocks, it's the exact opposite scenario. At the very top of the list, very, very strong, top-heavy weakness. But look at the advanced decline. It's down 60. We'll see that in a moment. Because a lot of stocks that are small, I don't mean small as in this is 52 billion, that is not small at all, but in the context of the S&P 100, these are at the lower end of market cap range, and they just about all were green. So this wasn't a day we can all come in and say it was bearish. It just wasn't. So we can look at it this way, or within this picture of market cap, or the index watch in the S&P 500, that's roughly even. But the key here is, again, when you add that mathematics on market cap, 7 to about 7 times, just about as much capital flowed out of the market as in, and that's on the backs of the large market cap names. The other way, of course, is the heat map. There's the tech sector, there's the NASDAQ, and the bigger the box, the bigger the market cap, the bigger the influx, or bigger the impact on the NASDAQ. Here's the S&P. So out of the day, 3 sectors were bullish and the others were bearish. That is why the NASDAQ and the monsters of tech were down as much. The Dow mini futures actually pushed another high, little intraday swing high, not quite a new all-time high. Russell continues to trade inside of its trading range, and that range is roughly 2150 or 2125 and about 2325 or 2350. A quick glance before we look at tech, or before we look at financials, does show Tesla in its trading range, NVIDIA similarly coming down at the lower bound of its range, and Microsoft back to its little support target at about the 304. So those are focusing on technology, but we don't want to focus specifically on that, because if we look at our list, now we're going to sort by stocks that have earnings. This is days till earnings. BlackRock, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, and JP Morgan will be reporting before the bell. That's going to take place Friday, the 14th in January. Now, our positions Don has recommended and has put in the end of day for butterfly earnings-based butterfly trades. So what's the thought process in financials, stepping outside of earnings? So after tomorrow morning, and tomorrow afternoon, we're going to know more about the state of financial stocks. Of course, after that comes Bank of New York Mellon, Goldman Sachs, and then we start getting into Procter & Gamble at Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, and so on. Netflix comes up soon as well. But what is the general picture? Where are the prices? So in terms, actually we'll start with the XLF. Have shown this in last week's video, prior video. The financial sector was strong on the back of stocks like Wells Fargo. Generally speaking, it was quite bullish all through 2022. Citigroup was bullish, and it's actually coming up off the lows. JP Morgan went low to high, and just focusing on this new year, financial stocks, bank stocks in general, have been bullish, most of them at least. Bank of America, and of course the broader sector. But one quick note, we can look at TNX. What is TNX? TNX is your 10-year Treasury note, and that is the yield. So that's what interest rates, yields, those are in focus. If we see 1, or if we see 18, that actually means 1.8. If we see 1.5, that means 1.5%. And whenever we see this 10, that is actually 1% in the Treasury yield. We'll keep our focus on, for lack of a better perspective, 2.0 and 1.0. We're closer to that upper bound at 18 and the top of the short-term range. Just mentioned that financial stocks had a good 2022, first few days of it. So did Treasury yields. And that is in line with expectations. Yields go up, that tends to be bullish for broader financial stocks. But what happens when the yield comes down? And we know, or we can at least expect or plan or trade something that is overbought 5, 6, 7 days in a row to the upside, that has a better shot to come back down. That's a rubber band snapback. So what happens if interest rates do short-term pull back from 1.8? Most likely, you'll see financial stocks, the XLF is in play here, pull back as well. Now that's the pullback, that's the snapback scenario. That seems to be the higher odds as we go into our earnings for key financial companies. We display probabilities. And the other times that happened, or at least similar thought process, was an overextended market tends to pull back. The next move of a market that has multiple days to the upside is what I like to call a rubber band snapback. But sometimes they overextend, but they do eventually pull back. That's the thought process for financials at the moment. That would translate, looking at the yields at least, for a pullback in yields. That would take it down to about 16 or 1.65 for the yield, maybe lower. That yield is balanced around 1.75 and about 1.35. On the other side is TLT, which is a tradable product. That's your ETF for the bond market in general, one of the main ETFs. And that's pushing up off the 142. So it is just the exact opposite of Treasury yield, is the price of the bonds. And if we use the same logic, we extend our sideways trading range. That makes 148 a good little upside target for the bond market. We highlighted this other day, looking at the bond market to bounce. So far, we're getting that bounce. That was again from Tuesday's or last Thursday's video. And we can look at this in the bond market itself, which is actually a little bit more weak than the TLT. This is ZN, the 10-year Treasury note, and ZB, the 30-year Treasury bond. So that's what we'll be watching in, of course, Thursday into Friday and into next week. Where are yields heading? Are they pulling back? If they're pulling back, financial stocks, XLF and some of the names we just talked about, they probably pull back as well. Might that boost technology? All these things are certainly in focus as we learn tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon what financial stocks have to say about earnings. And those will be BlackRock, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, and JP Morgan to kick us off tomorrow. Stay safe, be careful. This is Corey Rosenblum with tonight's Theo video update for January 13, 2022.